Good morning, and welcome to episode 6 of SpookySpice's Morning Latte. It's been a little while since the last one, and we're sorry about that, but I have a pretty cool one. If you remember, at the end of episode 5, I said that the next one would be my girlfriend and my editor joining me and telling her scariest ghost stories or encounters or nightmares, and, well, here we are. Hi, Victoria.
Hello.
You've been on here twice before, and I'm excited, actually, because I know some of what you're going to talk about clearly, but I don't know, I'm excited to hear you narrate it again. It's been a while. So basically what we're going to do is she's going to tell me a couple of her creepiest, we'll say, experiences to, broaden it up. And then after she's done with that, we're going to go on to Reddit/Let's Not Meet and read some of the people there and their scariest real encounters. I use air quotes because obviously I'm not going to know if any of these are real, but I'm going to read through them and we're going to see what we think. If we think they're scary, if we think they're total nonsense, and it should be fun. Okay, so to start off, what's your scariest ghost encounter?
Ghost encounter-wise has to be the one most recently. I was downstairs in my finished basement with my younger brother, and we were cleaning up, and as he walked in the door, I saw this thing, and I thought he had, thrown a shirt up into the air, and it fell on the ground, and when I went over after he had walked away to go and pick it up and give it to him, there was nothing there. So there was this giant, dark, black shadow that just flew across the doorway that I thought was real and was a shadow.
Now, with your basement, it's not, movie stereotypical creepy completely, but just to describe it and make it easier to see how creepy this would be for her. There's basically two sides of her basement. One side's this really nice apartment-looking side, and the other side is like a workshop that they use every single day. And in that, so basically you walk through a second door that would lead to this workshop. There's a really long hallway that, I'm 5'6", I'm 180 pounds. Victoria's not much shorter than me. And we could not fit side by side. You have to walk single file to get through it. Now, at the end of it is this little workshop, and halfway to that workshop in that hallway, there is a, old...
We knocked out the wall,
yeah.
And we haven't gotten to, clear out all the dirt yet, so it's, an unfinished, knocked out
where did you
pile.
say you were standing? And now that we know how the layout, where did you say you were standing when it happened?
I was, if you go down the stairs, I was straight back at the end of that room, not the workshop.
It's like a long bonus room kind of thing.
I was there, and my brother was at the bottom of the stairs between the workshop and the door to the finished side.
Now, the stairs do have a scary look. They definitely have a shining kind of look to them. So you said it was so you saw a shadow, or you saw a blob?
It was some sort of black mass. And then after it happened, I walked over and I tried to debunk it. But my shadow was way too light. The light was not shining in the right direction for my shadow to have the same effect at all.
And that's not the first time that something creepy like that has happened in your house where your family's at, correct?
Correct.
Even better. So what about dreams, nightmares? Because in the last one I talked about a couple creepy ones that I had. And I didn't mention this in the last one because I thought it would be cooler to bring up now. I mentioned a dream where I was being chased and eventually attacked by a shadow thing. And, well, you can tell your nightmare and we can see why that's really interesting. I had that one not too long ago.
So this one really freaked me out and I woke up really upset afterwards. But I have these really vivid dreams, and this happened to be a not dream and it was a nightmare. But my family and I went on vacation to this place. This is the dream, not real life. And it was time for bed, and I was sharing, I guess, this rental room with my grandma and my younger sister. My parents had their room. and then both of my younger brothers had separate rooms. So I went to go check on my youngest brother before bed, and I had a weird feeling, and I saw this girl, and she was in the next room over, like peeking through the window at me, and she gave me this really weird feeling. So I said goodnight to my brother, and I went back to the room where I was staying.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at my grandma, and I was like, I don't trust her. I'm going back to get my brother. Can he sleep with us? So she said, yeah, of course. So I walked out of the room, and I go down, and I walk into my youngest brother's room, and at the foot of the bed, he's on the floor. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie Veronica.
It's that horror movie that everybody said was too hard for a lot of people to watch. It's on Netflix. It's an okay movie, but it's in a different language if you go and look it up.
It's decent. There's subtitles. Anyway, at the foot of the bed, my brother was on the floor, and there was that shadow demon creature in Veronica, if you want a reference, and it had this long demon finger, like, down his throat. And when I saw it, it, like, took its finger out of its throat, ran away, and I ran over to my brother, and I'm like, wake up, wake up. And I was like, you are on the floor, do you know this? And he's like, I don't remember how I got here. And that's when I woke up and started crying, because that was scary.
Yeah, that's a pretty awful one to have.
This is before I had seen any trailers of Veronica or watched the movie.
That's even creepier.
So
I feel like sometimes nightmares and dreams like that, they can have an almost symbolic kind of thing to it. And by that I mean, you're at school a lot of the time, and maybe, you know, dreams like that, nightmares like that, are your subconscious, like missing your family, missing your little brothers, and you're always protective of them, of course, they're your family. But you're not there, so in your nightmares, your worst fears are something happening to them, and you're powerless to help them, which is, in your nightmare, what you said, you got there too late, which, I mean, not to call you out on your dream being lazy, but you didn't get there quick enough.
Sorry, I was 5 seconds too late.
And I feel like in a lot of cases that could just be your worst fears. Like mine, I mean, I described it, but it's really similar to yours, and a lot of the times I could have similar fears. And I just think that's an interesting thing. Is there any other ones that you wanted to mention?
I also had this dream. I don't remember what happened in it. There was some kind of car accident or bus crash that I was in, and after the crash, I woke up and I could not hear anything for at least 30 seconds, and I thought I had went deaf.
After your dream?
After that crash.
After the crash in your dream?
Yeah.
Have you ever had sleep paralysis?
I did sleepwalk when I was little.
Oh, really?
One time. That's an embarrassing story. But I did sleepwalk when I was little.
I mean, kind of depends. If it's like stepbrother sleepwalking, yeah, you should be embarrassed. I've never, to my knowledge, I've never sleepwalked. Watch, I post this, and my mom and dad are like, oh yeah, you did that hundreds of times. I mean, there's been, I named a few, but I think one of the weirdest experiences I had with a nightmare was, I have a friend. I'm going to leave the friend unnamed. I'm actually going to leave the level that we're friends. By that I mean, best friend, barely friends, because I really don't want anyone to know who this is. There was this one time, we lived in separate states, and I had this really messed up nightmare. It was so bad, I actually considered messaging them, just to see, like, you know, how they're doing and stuff, because it seemed so realistic. And that same day, before I had time to take out time to send them a paragraph of how are you, I got a message from them that said, I had a really messed up dream and I was just wondering how you were doing. I wanted to message you. To say I was trembling inside is an understatement. I have not been so weirded out. Not even freaked out or scared. I was just weirded out. It was like, I don't know how to explain it, but it really messed with my head. And I didn't tell them because it's kind of creepy. Hence the fact I'm leaving them unnamed and who they are. But it was a while ago too, but it was really creepy.
I also had a dream once where a friend of mine was dying in a hospital, and right after the dream I messaged them just to see how they were doing, and of course
sometimes dreams can get to you like that.
Anxieties and...
So we are going to move on, and like I said before, we are going to go on to Reddit/r/Let's Not Meet, and we're just going to read some of the highest upvoted stories and see what they're like. I'll name the usernames and stuff, but you should really check out the subreddit for yourself. It's pretty cool, actually. So this first one is called The Little Girl at My Door at 3 a.m. And it was submitted 2 days ago by Squared K. That's Squared K with a QUE. I made this account specifically to share my short little experience on here. It's not the typical let's not meet story, but it disturbs me to this day, so I shall share it. So I was about 14 years of age when this happened. I was in my bed trying to sleep, but as always, I was failing. My dad was in the living room trying to rock my brother asleep. This was a normal routine, but this night wasn't normal. I finally think I'm about to fall asleep when I hear these loud knocks on my front door. It echoed throughout the whole house. It's like 3 a.m. The knocks are then followed by a girl screaming, "Help, please, my mom needs help," over and over. She was practically shrieking. My dad assumes it's some sort of trap. They use a little girl, dad becomes vulnerable, opens door, easy access inside the house, and so forth. So he's yelling back at her to leave us alone through the door. This little girl starts crying, kicking our door over and over again. Her screams still ring in my head every now and then. By this point, I'm sitting upright in my bed, crying as well. I'm terrified and upset with my dad because what if she needed help? So maybe 10 minutes go by of this continuous crying and screaming when I hear a man outside my window, which is only a few inches besides my front door, where the girl was. And I hear him telling the girl to shut up. And I can hear him grab her, and she's screaming for him to let her go. I felt sick to my stomach. I wanted to look out my window, but I was paralyzed with fear. I can tell he's dragged her into the street. Her screams for her mother became quieter the further they got. Soon, I hear about 3 cars speed down the street. After a lot of men were yelling, I assume at each other. My parents called the police and tried to tell me to go to sleep, but I was too scared and traumatized. To this day, which is about 3 years later, I think about that little girl and her mother all the time, scared of what might happen to them. I used to want to know, but now I don't think I want to, as bad as that sounds. So, little girl and strange man, let's not meet again. Well, kinda. That's pretty creepy.
I don't think it's scary. I think it's sad.
I think it's scary because it's realistic.
It is real.
But the only thing that I kind of see that's odd about it is they say at the end his parents called police. But it seems like this was a while after the girl first started screaming. Why did the dad wait so long? Because if the dad knew it was a trap from the get-go,
he should have called.
Yeah, why not when you're just telling her to go away? Why not call then? Because even if it isn't a trap, if you call the second it's happening, then somebody will get there quick enough to either do something or catch this person. So that's the only thing I kind of found odd about this, but at the same time, based on the age that they're saying they were, maybe they have details off. So there is there's a comment from Ralphie678, and that says, "I once had 2 little girls knocking at my door at night saying their dad needs help. I could see him sitting down a few meters away. I went out and I locked the door behind me to keep my girlfriend safe, just in case. It turns out the children's mother was a psycho who threw a chair at the man and he was badly bleeding. Nothing sinister at all. I agree it needs to be assessed on a case-by-case basis." That's fair. I mean, I guess it really is case-by-case because we'll use ourselves as an example. So I'm 21, you're 22. If we were, we've gone to Myrtle Beach and using an Airbnb before. If that had happened to us at an Airbnb in a completely different state, there's no way that I'm going to open that door. Granted, I'm not going to be like the dad in the beginning, and I'm not going to wait 10 years to call, but I'm not opening that door.
Not at all.
Even if it turns out that because of me, something bad happened to somebody, I'm not risking our lives for that. Now, that being said, if I'm in a house with, we'll say one of your family parties, because there's a lot of people at your house during those. If that happens earlier, and there's a bunch of people in the house, whether they're asleep or staying over, I'm going to find someone else to know what's going on with me. But I'll probably do something more like Ralphie's comment, where I step out, make sure everything's locked behind me, and deal with it like that. But it's too case by case. But I feel like The first story, the girl at my door at 3 a.m., the square K one, I feel like maybe it's true, but I feel like it's definitely a little bit over-exaggerated. I feel like the over-exaggerations might come from that parents calling and, stuff like that. I feel like maybe some of it's just changed in his mind as time's gone on, but
that's possible.
It's definitely a realistic story, and it could happen, and it happens, and I mean, there's movies based off of it. The Strangers is literally this. The girl knocks on the door at 2, 3, 4 a.m. She says, I think it's Tamara. She says, "Is Tamara home?" And, the odds are the person answers the door says, "No, she's not home." In the first Strangers movie, spoilers, but Victoria hasn't seen it, so this makes it a little bit easier to follow. Unfortunately, the main characters die. There isn't even a final girl. They just die. And at the end of the movie, after they've struggled to survive and they just don't end up doing it, the strangers have the couple tied up, and the girl asks the strangers, "Why are you doing this?" And the young girl, who was the one that knocked in their door and asked if Tamara was home, says, "Because you were home." And that's all they say, and then they kill them. It's such a horrifyingly real movie, and this story kind of gives me that same vibe, and it's just crazy those kind of things can happen, but... Alright, so this next one is called Unsettling Client Tried to Corner Me Alone. It's from Trina Empathy. It was submitted 1 day ago on the same subreddit as I just said. There is a little statement at the top. This post is not graphic or explicit, but at the end there is an implication stated in the title. So if you don't want to hear the implication, if that might freak you out a little bit, just know that there might be something implied at the end that's not exactly PG. So, there's your warning. Not very long ago, a colleague of mine from the next city over texted me to refer a client. I work in a kind of niche profession, and there aren't many of us locally, so it's nice to refer out to a colleague with specialties. This time, my colleague referred me a client for a service I consider fairly unethical. So I got offended and just said I would educate the client and see if he wanted to take a different direction. This client was a man, and called me up that day. I told him straight out the gate that I was out of work until a specified date, but was happy to answer questions. He said he understood and gave me well wishes. He asked about the service he wanted, and I told him that it wasn't something I could do with a clean conscience. I told him what we could do instead, and we chatted for a bit about that. Here's where my mistake started. He made a strange implication that we might hit it off in person, but I kind of brushed this off as typical sexist bullshit. He also gave me a bit of a pity story. In retrospect, an unusually charming one that may have been designed off of the About Me page on my website. I sympathized, and then he started gently asking me about why I was out of work. I gave a sort of vague answer and told him I really appreciated the thought. I was clearly very vulnerable at this point in my life, but I told him I honestly thought he was a great candidate for the service I suggested. So I would come into the office for a consultation as long as he was okay to wait a few weeks for the service itself. He was really appreciative and agreed to it, but weirdly concluded the call by telling me that I could call him if I needed anything. I went into the office a few days later for the consultation, and when he walked in, he immediately reminded me of my insane abusive ex. This guy, Roger, had a very unique and strange sort of facial features with a very deep voice. He gave me an unusually firm handshake, especially considering I'm a small young woman. He immediately tried to be charming. In a minute or two, I felt something wasn't right, but I did the consultation anyway. He was too lavish with the gratitude for the exception I made by coming in for the consultation. Other than that, it still seemed the usual until I mentioned something about how stress can generally overwhelm a person. He started grilling me about what it was that put me out of work. He was very strange and very pushy about it, even after I told him I wanted to keep things professional. And then I started to feel really uneasy. My mind became foggy and I felt weak, and he dropped another line about how we would soon be traveling the world together. He kept fishing more and more obviously for personal information. He must have seen my religious decorations in the farthest, least visible corner, because he kept dropping hints about being spiritual, eventually asking me if I was too. This was extra unsettling because I didn't even figure out that until a few minutes after the questions. At that point, I instinctively felt physically afraid. My desk is nowhere near the only exit of the office, and I didn't have much physical strength because I was sick. The only thing I could think to use to defend myself was my car keys, so I grabbed them and put them in my pocket. Every once in a while, when I changed the subject back to work, he would get really agitated, and I constantly had my hand ready to grab the keys. Everything about this guy was a red flag, and I was scared. Since he already wanted the service, I decided to start the paperwork early so he could get finished as soon as possible, then tell him later I had to cancel. Sometimes it's safer to give these crazy people what they want until you can get away. He took an insane amount of time to get through it with me, and kept pausing to ask questions and make comments. He could definitely tell it was agitating me. But even when we were done with the questions, he paused and talked for 1,000,000 years between signatures on the forms. Finally, we were done with the official process, so I immediately took out my calendar and asked if he wanted to schedule now or call later. Of course! He tells me there's a small problem. Because his work season starts on the exact day I told him I was coming back to work myself, he wanted me to come back to work while I was clearly sick, even though the date was the first stipulation I had given him over the phone. He told me he wouldn't be available at all after that date, probably seeing my distress and trying to be extra manipulative. I insisted that I couldn't make exceptions, and he kept trying to make me feel bad for him. I repeated myself a few times before I told him I had to leave, and finally just told him I would email him some resources. He gave me his card, but warned me that his secretary reads his emails, so he wanted me to be discreet. This was a completely ridiculous idea, considering that the email would have to explicitly be about the service I provide. I made up some bull about how I would figure it out, knowing I wasn't going to contact him anyway. He lingered at the door as I tried to leave with him, holding up my time again. I started shaking, being so close to this guy and so ready to leave. All my stuff was in the office still, but I planned on going to the bathroom, the women's, which automatically locks, to bide my time until he left. We finally went outside the hall, and I waved goodbye as I walked towards a dead-end hall to the bathroom. The exit staircase was in the opposite direction. This is what wound up scaring me the most. I didn't hear him move for a moment after I turned to leave until I heard his footsteps right behind me. The whole building was empty, and I decided not to freeze like I usually do. I turned around very abruptly and said, "The exit is that way, Roger. This one is an emergency exit, and the alarm will ring if you touch the door. Goodbye." I scurried quickly and obviously to the bathroom, and stayed there a long time before I came back to pack up the office. Outside, I practically ran to my car as I watched the whole lot for other people. He texted me weeks later, still before I came back to work, asking if I had any openings. Since I didn't have any openings the first or second time he asked, I replied we wouldn't be a good fit. He continued texting, and I stopped responding. I should have just said, "Let's not go forward, and let's not ever meet." That one was creepy.
I hate men.
Yeah, totally realistic. So clearly she's a therapist of some kind, and that's horrifying. It's so real. There's nothing paranormal. There's no horror aspect. You don't even know if this guy was planning. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to stick up for this guy in any way. This is disgusting. But, this isn't a movie. This guy might not even be trying to kill her. It might be something as simple as he's just creepy and wants to get, with this girl in the most disgusting kind of way. It's just so insane how realistic and depressing it is that this is real. I mean, I don't want to get on a topic of how, women have to be put in spots like that, or how sometimes obviously men can too. That isn't, they're not going to get into that. Looking at this purely as a horror story, this is so real. The same thing as the last one. The real element to it is so scary. It's just otherworldly almost. Victoria isn't going to add anything to this one because I think that story actually got her a little shook up. You okay?
I think so.
I have a feeling you're going to subscribe to this Reddit thread. Again, this is the Reddit thread r/let's not meet. It's really awesome. Check it out. Obviously, they're not asking me to say any of this because there's no reason to, and they don't know I'm doing this, which is why I'm making sure I shout it out, and the people who made these posts. It's just really interesting, and it's a public site. It's just great to read some of these stories, as horrifying as some of them may be.
That one just got to me because I am also a very small woman. So men kind of scare me even if they're my size.
No, I understand.
But most men are larger than me. And I also work in a profession that is mostly male. So.
Yeah, that was rough. That's real rough. Well, thank you, Victoria, for hanging out. I'm sorry you're going to leave all freaked out.
Time to go watch a Disney movie.
But if you like these 2 scary episodes I've done, make sure you let me know, because the only way I'm going to know you like them is if you tell me. I'm on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and basically everywhere else you can find a podcast, so leave me a rating or leave me a comment and let me know if you like it. Next week's episode is still up in the air, but if you noticed, I said next week. I'm going to work out a new podcast schedule, which is going to coincide with some Patreon announcements that I'm going to have. I really didn't think it was going to be the thing that I did that took off in any kind of way, but I'm going to keep doing it because of that. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I want to thank the person that edits it, and that is Victoria, who ironically was in this episode.
Hello.
And if you want to keep up to date, check me out on Twitter, check out the Facebook, join the Discord community, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for sharing your Spooky Spice latte with me. I'm glad to have shared it with you.